Welcome back to the Unlock Your Potential podcast. I'm Matt Faupel, founder of FaupelX, and this is where we get serious about commercial real estate leadership and operations. If you're a property manager or CRE leader who wants to scale smarter, earn real trust with stakeholders, and lead with precision, you're in the right place. Today we're diving into something that often gets treated as background noise in our industry: building codes. Most managers only think about them when an inspection fails or a tenant points out an issue. But here's the truth. Building codes are not arbitrary. Nearly every line in the codebook was written after a disaster, a tragedy, or a hard lesson learned. And when you understand that history, you stop treating codes like a checklist and you start seeing them for what they really are: a playbook that keeps your buildings from becoming the next headline. So let's go through some history to help with our perspective and understand how did we get to this point. 1758 BC, one of the first building laws ever written. It literally said, if a builder constructs a house improperly and it collapses and kills the owner, the builder shall be put to death. Now, a little extreme, yes, but those principles are timeless. Construction and management carry a heavy responsibility even in today's time. 1666, the Great Fire of London. Let's set the scene. It was a wooden city, narrow streets, no building standards. What resulted was nearly the whole city being burnt down. The aftermath gave us what was called the London Building Act, which introduced brick and stone requirements, fire breaks, and most importantly, building inspectors. That was the birth of the code enforcement as we know it. 1871, the Great Chicago Fire. Again, this was another situation with dense, wood-frame construction buildings, no fireproofing. The city burned, insurers revolted, and the first model of building codes in America started to appear after this. 1911, factory fire. There was locked exits, inadequate fire escapes, and over 146 lives lost in a matter of minutes. This one event is why today we have outward swinging exit doors, maximum occupancy limits, mandated fire drills, and sprinklers in high-rise factories. Every time you push an exit bar, this factory fire in 1911 is something to consider. 1942, nightclub fire. Over 492 people died because the main exit was a revolving door that jammed under the crowd pressure. That's why every revolving door today is flanked by outward opening exits, why flammable decor is restricted, and why occupancy limits are enforced. 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. Now, this is not a fire, but rather a social failure. Too many people were being excluded from public life buildings because they weren't accessible. The ADA mandated ramps, accessible restrooms, wider doorways, braille signage, and fines for those that don't comply. 2000, the International Building Code IBC. After decades of patchwork rules, the IBC unified standards across the U.S. Today, nearly every jurisdiction uses it as a baseline, with updates provided every 3 years. The lesson learned as we look back on history, and there's so many other examples, is that codes can be reactive. They exist because people got hurt or worse. Your role as a property manager is to make sure your building never becomes the next case study for one of these topics. A good rule of thumb is to follow a stricter standard. Never assume that your property is getting grandfathered in and that protects you or the owner. Accessibility and safety expectations continue to evolve, and this is something you need to be knowledgeable about. And this is where property managers can win or lose. Inspections aren't about just passing a test. They're about proving that you take safety seriously. Here are a couple items, if you're taking notes, to consider after this episode. Exits and emergency lighting. Every door on your property should open easily, no obstructions, your exit signs are illuminated, and the lights are functional during a test and for a drill. Fire systems. Your smoke detectors are tested, your extinguishers are tagged, sprinklers are often inspected, and your records are up to date on those fire systems. Occupancy and egress. Your maximum occupant load is posted and you enforce that. Just because someone wants to have several hundred people in a conference room doesn't mean that that's okay. Exits swing outward and it's easily accessible. There's no blocked stairwells, no storage in corridors, and this is something that we all can be guilty of. Some properties have no room for storage, and it takes a lot of things to run a property, but blocking those exit doors or blocking a place for sheltering if severe weather, those are recipes for disaster that can be avoided. Accessibility. Make sure you check that your ramps are clear, parking spots are marked, restrooms are compliant, your elevators are certified. Even small misses on these topics, a door that's too heavy to open, these are things that will get called out, and it's better to deal with them ahead of time than in the moment. And lastly, check your records. Make sure you're keeping your inspection reports, permits, certifications all organized. It's not there to impress the inspector. It's there to be prepared and understand that you were ready for this interaction and that you are knowledgeable about your building, about your property. And here's the truth about all of these things I just talked about, and there's so many other examples, is that building codes are an example of leadership. Because when the fire marshal or the inspector walks through your doors, they're not just evaluating the building, they're evaluating your credibility, your knowledge on these topics. Most importantly, every grab bar, every outward swinging exit, every illuminated sign is there because somebody in history paid the price for its absence. By staying vigilant and honoring that lesson, you're actually protecting lives in the future. Building codes should not be considered a nuisance. They're an operating system for safety in our industry, and every rule that you follow keeps your building off of a front page for a wrong reason. That's a wrap on today's episode of Unlock Your Potential. If this episode gave you some clarity on building codes, best practices, do me a favor and share it with someone else in commercial real estate. I have a much more in-depth guide on my Unlock Your Potential newsletter on LinkedIn with a lot more examples and a lot more detail on these topics. If you have time, check out FaupelX.com, and on there you can try out CRE Pro on ChatGPT, ask it some of these questions about building codes, and let me know how that goes. Until next time, keep going.